Hello everybody and welcome back to KXP. We're going to start off right here at the KSC and just jump right on into today's episode. We have a lengthy and complicated mission ahead of us and I want to just dedicate as much time to it as possible. I spent a lot of time before the events of this episode, trying to design a rescue craft to grab all the kerbals off the surface of Duna. However, after banging my head against the machine for literal hours, I just couldn't come up with a craft that just could do it well enough. I kept making everything bigger and bigger, and it just wasn't working out. So I decided we're going to gather more science, I think. And to do that, we're going to explore a much easier target, because of the fact that it doesn't have any atmosphere. We don't have to deal with the drag of the ascent launch like we do at Duna. So that is, if you can't tell by the name of the episode, we are going to Ike. And Ike is the moon of Duna, and there's plenty of science to grab there. All we need to do is come up with a lander, make sure the lander can get to and from the surface, and then figure out how to get it there. Initially, I was planning on having this be an Apollo-style craft where we send one craft down to the surface of the moon, and then have it, when it comes back up, it'll dock with a different craft that will take everything, and then that craft itself will be the one that brings the kerbal and the science home through the atmosphere. Because this command pod that I'm using, the ASET Alcor is the mod, is not designed for re-entry. It loves to overheat, and it loves to explode at just even the slightest breath amount of heat of re-entry, and so it is not the right choice. So as you can see here, we're basically planning on making this just the lander and then docking. However, just a little bit of spoilers, we will eventually abandon that in favor of just a direct descent, and we're going to be taking this whole thing on home. So we'll show you how we end up doing that when we get there. I've been talking straight over it, but we're packing this bay full of science, and I realize here that we have, due to one of our mods, we have this ability to have a micro goo pod. So we traded off the normal size mystery goo for those, and I'm struggling to find what to put on the side, so I put some Kerbal Engineer Redux computer chips. Not only do we not need two of them, we don't actually need it at all, because we do plan on bringing an engineer with us. The Alcor pod has space for 3 kerbals, so we're going to bring a full suite of a pilot, engineer, and a scientist. So I'm going to go ahead and get my science experiments on their action groups. We now know how to do action sets, so we're going to have one set for the lander, one set for the launch vehicle. And so for the lander, we're putting half of our experiments, because we brought 2 of each. We're putting half of them on action group 2, and then we're having this bay at the top collect the science on action group 4. Action group 3 is the secondary set of science, and that is the one in the back. So the goal is to collect some science from high in space above Ike, low in space above Ike, and then we're also going to want to grab some science when we land. So we're going to end up reusing some of the science experiments in that bay for that third one. And here we have 3 experiments that require us to be landed, and so we're going to put those down there. And on a third experiment, 4 experiments that requires to be landed. So let's go ahead and put another science collection unit on top, and that's going to handle the leftovers if anything can't be taken into the first one, as well as the leftover, or the whole of the third set of experiments that landed. So I struggle with the size of the solar panels necessary. I want it to be compact enough, but also to be able to remain powered the whole way. So I end up going for these. This is still during the time when I feel like I'm going to be doing an Apollo style mission, so I get the ones that can't retract and just call it a day. So now I'm working on the landing aspect. We're going to put a light here to give us something to see in if we land in the dark. And then I am putting on some cameras here. This is KXP, not POV, so we don't really need to put any cameras there because we're basically going to be playing in third person for the majority of it, but it's still fun to include it when dealing with this Alcor pod. It's a lot of fun to utilize it, and I can't wait until we unlock it in the POV series because we're going to be using it a lot, and we're probably going to be using it correctly, doing Apollo style dockings and returns and whatnot. But alas, we're not going to use it all that much, the IVA mode, in today's episode, but soon enough. Anyways, I am just once again finishing up my action groups. I'm adding a third, instead of having my scientists come out and reset the materials bay study in the mystery group, I'm just going to add an extra one onto them. And as you saw earlier, I added those the experiments in the service bay on the back. I add those to the landed action group science as well. So we should be good to go to grab 3 different places. So now I want to test it out, but we don't have a simulation active to be able to orbit around Ike. All we can do is simulate the orbit around Duna. So I'm going to add that little bottom stage just so I can get myself to Duna and or to Ike from Duna, and then I can test the lander to make sure that has enough. The test was good enough, but it made me think, why am I just fudging the numbers and just putting it on an engine that doesn't matter? Might as well start building the interplanetary stage and test from there. So we have this 4-way engine plate and a couple of nerve engines. We have access to a much beefier nuclear engine, but we're just going to go in favor of a little bit better thrust to weight. So now I'm going to put on this thing, and I'm not even adding an engine because I really just want to test the decoupling ability of it. And I want to see, this is just me playing around with some separatrons I'm gonna kind of bury into this design, and I thought that was kind of cool. So we're gonna test that real fast, and it's gonna go horribly, and that is because this was clipped into it, and so we're gonna have to move it down so it doesn't do that again. And of course it doesn't do that again. So, but for somewhere along the lines it actually fixed the fairing shroud, so now it's covered entirely, and so that's pretty good. Moving on to the launch vehicle, we're going to load it up with 7 mainsail engines, and that's going to give us a healthy thrust to weight ratio of almost 2 points, so that is good. Now that we have some aerodynamics, it actually raised to 2.24, so it just goes to show how minor changes can make big differences. So we're going to make sure our staging is correct, and then we're going to do another test flight of it. And because this is going to spend so much time in interstellar space, we're going to want a way to keep it energized. So we're going to throw on these big beefy solar panels and kind of clip them in so they're nice and flat with the launch vehicle. But this will be better than the ones that we use on our lander. And so that's good. We're also going to put some communication dishes on it, because if we can transmit some science, that'll be useful for us, because there is a limited amount of space in those science containers. So anything that we can just get back to Kerman for a full amount of science, that is going to be worth it. What I talked through earlier while I was in the service bay, that was just because my magnetometer wasn't on the toggle back action group, so I just need to change that. Here I am playing around with different heat shields, because about this time I'm realizing that I actually have enough fuel and delta V basically to get myself back from Ike back to Kerman. So at this point, I'm starting to abandon the Apollo style mission. Here's those communitrons. We, of course, are using remote tech, so we have to point them, and we're going to point all three at Kerman. I can't remember if they stack in remote tech or not, but we're just going to do that. Let's get Valentina, Bill, and Poduki as our scientists, and we're going to throw on a heat shield here. I'm not really sure which way I want to do it, so but regardless, I think a bigger engine and a bigger fuel tank will behoove us, just to match our heat shield, and we don't really have to change our lifting vehicle all that much in order to accommodate it. So, but if I'm going to have that big of a lower stage, then I'm going to have a heat shield that can guarantee me my safety in the Alcor pod on return. And since we are going to be returning through the atmosphere, and this is no longer an Apollo style mission, we're going to want solar panels that can retract. So we switch them off, which is good because those are even beefier. They can handle a lot more electrical charge and keep ourselves good for longer. Anyways, we rebuild our fairing, get everything in order. We still have 2.2 thrust to weight on our side. We don't technically need these side boosters, but it will allow us to save some delta V in our center tank for both our circularization maneuver, but also we want to use some of that fuel to get us out of Kerman's sphere of influence. I don't want to use our interstellar stage, the nuclear stage. I don't want to use very much of that if I can to push our way out of Kerman. I want to use that primarily once we're in this orbit of the sun. So I'm changing around the ladders a little bit to have a little bit better control. I don't really know what the gravity situation on Ike is, so I want to make sure that my Kerbals can get their way back up after planting a flag and getting a surface sample. Because if we can't get our Kerbals back home, then that's just yet another rescue mission we're gonna have to do. And too many rescue missions all at once, and that's when things start going awry. But nonetheless, the goal for today's mission is to get ourselves so much science that we have a much more powerful space agency to go send, because we need to grab 8 Kerbals, and we need to have at least 1 Kerbal aboard as a pilot, potentially 2 because an engineer. I believe we do have a parts failure mod on here. We haven't had any problems with it so far, but having an engineer aboard means that if a problem does arise, we can fix it. So potentially it's going to be a 10 Kerbal mission. Oh, real fast, I just want to include this footage from the simulation and show that we had forgotten parachutes, but we had left on this super large heat shield, which slowed us down considerably. And on just heat shield alone, we were able to survive the whole capsule, science included. Yeah, so that was pretty fun. There's no extended cut footage for today's episode, but maybe in a future one, we'll be doing more of that, and you can see the test flight This episode took quite a lot because of how many test flights I ended up doing. I ended up running the entire mission probably about 3 times. Hence why no extended cut, because that would probably be about a 4-hour episode, and that's a little too much, I think, for most people, even on the channel members. But if that is something you're interested in, we have a lot of test flights of previous missions already up. But anyways, back to this. We are just getting ourselves finalized, checking our staging, and getting ready to put this out onto the launch pad. The Ike Lander V1 set to collect as much science as it can, bring it all back, and then move on from there. So without any further ado, let's load this up onto the launch pad. So for the rest of the episode, we are gonna go through the mission. It's a beautiful day, beautiful semi-cloudy, quite blue, very clear skies, gorgeous. But yeah, like I said, we've got a great thrust to weight ratio, so there's no problem getting off the launch pad and getting ourselves up to speed. By this point, I'm no doubt going more than 100 meters per second, so it's no problem for me to tilt over slightly and start working into our gravity turn. I do have a little bit of clipping from the communication dish through the point there. Unfortunate, but not worth resetting the launch for, so it'll be alright. Getting some heating effect on our fairing, so I know that we're starting to pick up a lot more speed. We've got just 18 meters per second, and now we are empty on our solid rocket boosters, and our apoapsis is at 131 kilometers, so it was about time for us to kill our throttle anyway, so our SRBs just float ever so slightly away from us. Let's go ahead and create a maneuver at our apoapsis using the precise maneuver mod to just easily and quickly circularize. We're going to plot that into flight computer. And so we're going to let flight computer handle the tilting of that. We are now in space. So everything is going according to plan. Let's go ahead and switch into our launch vehicle action group set and extend our solar panels and communication dishes. And with a minute and a half to go until our burn, we are lining up with our maneuver. 1973 meters per second of delta V in the tank, which should be more than enough to circularize. Yep, 1600 is what we need. I decided to hop into IVA real fast because why not? We got some time to kill while we do our circularization burn, so I figured let's just set up our screens the way that we like them, even though we're not doing an IVA mission. Why not? This command pod is just so much fun to play around with, especially doing any kind of lander mission. So why not? But with that, we have circularized. We still have plenty of delta V left in this stage, so we're going to be looking good for our Kerbal escape. There is a third seat here, but the scientist unfortunately has nothing to do but look at their fellow astronauts. So let's go ahead and start plotting our way to Duna. I decided to play around with Astrogator, which can set up an automatic maneuver. I accidentally hit warp to maneuver instead of create maneuver. And so when I go and do that, we're a lot closer. It was, I believe it was like 70 days that it needed to kill, but nonetheless, we are now closer. 9 days left to go. The maneuver itself is going to take 1,000 Delta V. We only have 351 in our launch vehicle, but the good ISP of the nuclear engine will handle the rest of that burn. It's only a 2-minute burn, which I feel on a nuclear engine is pretty respectable. It's not too bad. Once you get higher than a 3 or 4 minute burn, I think you start running the risk of taking too long to do your maneuver, and then it might be more efficient to break that into multiple maneuvers. So seeing that it's only going to take 2 minutes is quite nice. But anyways, I didn't like how the astrogator is handling the maneuver. I don't really enjoy it all that much, so we're going to actually change that around. But first, let's open up the solar panels on our lander. That's going to be useful. We're going to let the first part of the maneuver play out, though. We're going to burn off all of this fuel tank. There we go. And our throttle dropped down to 0 for some reason when we separated, so we've already kind of messed up the maneuver. So let's go ahead and cancel that. It doesn't matter. We can, we're in orbit. We're not in danger of crashing or anything. So we can just cancel our maneuver, focus on Kerbin, go to our periapsis, plot a new maneuver, and then continue where we left off. And so all we need to do is stretch this out to the sphere of influence, change into the sphere of influence of the sun, and then try to set up an encounter from there. We lucked out. Astrogator was pretty good by time warping us pretty close to a most efficient transfer window. I was pretty happy about that. We are going to do some slight adjustment and some mid-course correction, but all in all, we are on our way to Duna. It is so annoying trying to select the maneuver tool with all those different things around. There we go. So for some reason it's tracking the sun apoapsis. I'm not sure what went wrong there, but we're trying to focus on the closest approach, bring that down as low as possible until we get an encounter. And now we can time warp our way to the maneuver. Go ahead and execute. It's 628 meters per second, but we've got a hardy 3,200, so. And this is all going according to the test flight, so pretty happy with that. And we got Valentina behind the cockpit. What can go wrong? Fast forward a little bit because it was indeed a long burn, but nonetheless we got remote tech handling it, so we don't have any fear of overshooting. And there we go. We now have ourselves a Duna encounter. We're gonna throw in a mid-course correction here and bring ourselves a little bit closer. It'll be a little bit easier to pinpoint exactly where we want to go. Not only farther out into our orbit, but by using this precise maneuver tool to just really fine-tune my approach. Now I want to come in high enough This is a very high altitude. We're actually farther away from Duna than Ike is. But by having such a high altitude, it gives my low thrust nuclear engines enough time to grab hold and circularize. We can always adjust our altitude down later. So 171 days after launch, we are now approaching our final maneuver before our final approach. And just like that, we are ready to plot in our final circularization burn, but we're gonna go ahead and make sure that we're at full throttle once again. And using precise maneuver, we'll just plot that in. And then it was pretty fortuitous that just simply circularizing will get us an encounter with Ike. So we're gonna go ahead and take that. It may not be a great encounter, we don't know, haven't even looked, but we'll check it out once we get there, and if we need to adjust it once more, we can. I feel like I might want more stars. I don't know. Always end up changing around the skybox after a certain point in a series. Let me know what you think. More stars? Blue galaxies? The actual Milky Way nebula? Should I look into something different? We'll see. Let me know. So 341 days into our journey now, we have arrived at the periapsis of our orbit. And with no trouble at all, 750 some odd delta V out of our 2,500. Once again, still very much on track. This encounter actually is even more efficient than in my test flights, so doing pretty good. And there we go. It's a little bit funky of a line, but once we focus our view, we can understand it a little bit better. And we have an impact trajectory, and so we're gonna need to fix that. My first attempt is going to be at just pointing prograde and burning out a little bit, but as you see here, we no longer have our encounter. So we're going to set Ike as our target, and we're just going to keep this orbit that we have, but we're going to add another maneuver, and we're going to control our approach. There we go. Now let's fine tune that periapsis down to a low in space height, which for my tests I found that 34 kilometers is good enough. So we'll plot that into the flight computer. And the cool thing is if you look in the top left, you see that local control is in green, which means that, I mean, the local control aspect just means that there's Kerbals aboard and we can control it on our own. But the fact that it's in green means that we have communication with the KXP. We can transmit our science. We can communicate and do anything that we need to. If this was uncrewed, we would be able to fly it at its current state. So that's pretty good to see. So we are just going to burn ever so slightly because it doesn't take very much to to maneuver my way around Ike. There we go. For 123 meters per second out of our 1700, we can orbit. Pretty easy. Starting to say, I get why they say I like Ike. So with that, we are just going to time warp our way till we're in the sphere of the moon and get to the next set of our mission. We have Poduki, who was previously in the Around the World mission doing a lot of the science. He was, I don't know if he was one of the original scientists or if he joined on later. Let me know if you remember, but he is already a 1-star. Everyone is a 1-star kerbalnaut, but he will be handling all of the science needs today. And now we are in the sphere of the influence of Ike. So we can go ahead and switch out to the craft view. We're going to go into IVA because it's fun to walk outside the building. Or the spaceship. However, let's do the science first. I was going to go click it on there, but then I felt a little uncomfortable about it. I didn't want to press the wrong action group, so come out into third-person view. But like I was saying before, after that, we're going to get Poduki out on EVA, and we're going to do that from the IVA. So as you see here, I was able to transmit a little bit of science, which is good. It saves us an experiment to store, and gets everyone excited back home about the mission to come. But so here I am in IVA. We have free IVA installed, meaning we can unbuckle and get out of our seats, but sometimes it has a bug and doesn't like to work. And so we can solve that here with the use of these screens, and we go ahead and get our Kerbal out on EVA. There he is, looking a little hesitant to let go, but nonetheless, he's got control. So he needs to do two things. He needs to write an EVA report or record an EVA report. Let the Kerbals back home know what he sees and feels as he floats through space high above Ike. And then he has a science experiment to do. So let's go ahead and grab the EVA report and perform the science. And that is a little gravitational experiment where you take this little screw and you give it a little spin, and you spin as well, and it shows you the equal and opposite reactions of momentum. Very fun. And 125 science is nothing to sneeze at, so yeah, pretty happy about that. We're going to be doing that in low space as well, and as well as landed on Ike, because the EVA science, if I don't remember if that's from a mod or if it's, I think it's from Breaking Ground, but the EVA science is nothing to sleep on. You can get quite a bit from a little golf ball swing or a little screw drive. So with him safely aboard, it is now time to bring ourselves a little bit closer to the surface. Got a nice little planetary lineup here. It's interesting to see. I always love seeing all the different planets as we go. It's very inspiring because it's like, oh, there's where I'm going to go next. So we went ahead and stored all of the science, and we're going to go ahead and plot in the maneuver into flight computer, and then time warp our way there. We have so much Delta V, it's ridiculous. And with that, we bring our apoapsis and periapsis down to about 33 kilometers. So it shouldn't be too much of a hassle to bring ourselves down to the surface from here. We do our science in low space. We get 175 for the materials, 35 from the crew. The crew simply had to say, "I like Ike." Everyone does. There we go. We transmitted what we could, stored the rest. Gonna toggle in our magnetometer because for some reason the action group just is ignoring that maneuver. But let's go ahead and get Poduki out once again. And once again, unable to unbuckle his seatbelt. Maybe there's a child restriction on him. But let's go ahead and get him out via the screens. Once again on spacewalk, but this time with a much better view. Get a nice shot for posterity. Kerbal news in KXP has been going wild lately. Give this screw another turn. This time we have our RCS pack on, which automatically stabilizes us. So even though we experience a little bit of the reactive force from that, not enough to throw us. And then when we turn around, we go ahead and launch that out into its own orbit. So I think that's going to be kind of fun. 33 kilometers above Ike's surface. From now on will be a tiny piece of metal as its own little moon. Love it. This game offers so many fun moments, and when things just are working out so right, it's just so gratifying. I know I've said that before, but it's just so true. I love this game so much, and I hope you do too. But anyways, it is time to land, and honestly, we're going up above a place that seems like it might be a good enough area to land. It seems fairly flat, like it's a special zone. So rather than plotting in any kind of maneuver or doing anything, let's just point ourselves retrograde and kill off our horizontal velocity, come down in this darkened area, and go from there. I'm trying to kill off all my horizontal velocity, so I'm not attached to retrograde. I'm actually just keeping horizontal, and that's focusing more on the horizontal velocity than the vertical. We'll deal with the vertical afterwards. And this seems like a good enough place to land. I don't want to come too far, any bit closer. Because it seemed like we would start to have to deal with a hill at that point. Let's go ahead and turn off trajectories so we don't have to deal with that blue line. And at a rate of 39 meters per second and climbing, let's go ahead and descend down to the surface. In all of my tests, I use the nuclear engines for a bit, but then I will end up jettisoning them into the surface because they don't have landing legs, and our science experiments that work on the surface won't be able to reach. But on this instance, I decided to keep them, and I'm going to use our nuclear engines to land from. I went ahead and brought up the landing info. If you want to see our time to impact and whatnot, it is there on the left hand side. But anyways, I spoke through the introduction of the spikes. This is from the Parallax mod, just the regular one, not the new experimental one, but it made visiting this so much fun because in all of my Kerbal series, all we've ever done really is the Mun and Minmus, and Duna recently, but for the most part, all it's been is just boring old moon rocks. And now we have something as interesting as the Ike spikes, and yeah, pretty excited. I was on a Discord. Someone told me to check out Val. Val has some cool stuff on there. I didn't pry any further. I'm going to let that be a surprise. In fact, a lot of the parallax has been surprised. I know what Eve looks like, and I'm interested in checking that out. But for the most part, I don't know what's out there to store, which is the main reason why I want to explore. But anyways, here we are, touchdown on a new celestial body. We're going to do some science and continue. So happy that this worked out. Valentina did an excellent job piloting, so she deserves to be the first to place her boots in the surface. And so she's going to go down, plant a flag, and then leave it up to Poduki to do the rest. Bill is going to stay inside the ship for this journey. He is unfortunately not going to put any boots on the surface, but that's okay. We need to make sure that we take as few risks as possible with our Kerbals, because as fun as it is to land, as beautiful as it is to explore, everything in space is certain death, and you're only holding on by a margin. And so getting him out onto the surface just for the sake of getting him out onto the surface means that we spend all that time risking losing him somehow. So unfortunately, Bill, you're going to stay inside. But Valentina proudly plants a flag on Duna, the Duna flag from the flag mod pack that I created, available in CCAN. Minimalist Kerbal flags for everybody. Kerbal system flags? I always forget the name. Link in the description below. But anyways, let's get Valentina back in the cockpit. I'm glad there was little enough gravity that I could just use my RCS pack instead of having to deal with that ladder, because I don't think that ladder is perfect. So I was glad to not have to rely on it. Anyways, we get Poduki out, stuck in first person for a little bit. Not stuck, but just decided to descend in first person. It's quite a nice feeling, quite an eerie feeling. And so he gives a little Kerbal salute to the achievement, and then gets ready to do his science. Yeah, that's what we'll call it. Science. So he waves goodbye to the ball and does his best to estimate its trajectory just by eye, and then he'll tell everybody about it later. But 200 points of science for that. Cannot complain. So let's go ahead and get him back into the cockpit. And since we landed with our nuclear engines, this was not ever planned in the test flight. I never did this in the test flight. That means we have extra fuel. We didn't use any of our lander's fuel to come down to the surface, meaning that we have even more fuel than we would in order to ascend and get back home. So I'm feeling a little courageous. I'm feeling a little daring. And I'm feeling like I'm not really sure the difference between the two, but either way, we are going to launch once again, take off from the surface, point ourselves towards a nice flat area over the horizon, and we're going to attempt another landing, a biome hop, and this time we will jettison the engines because we want to make sure we can get that ground surface science. We weren't able to grab any of this ground surface science in that last biome because of the nuclear engine, but this time we'll get it. And we were in a very specific biome that time. We were in a mountain range. I didn't take the time to acknowledge that, but so it's nice. I always like when I come to a very specific biome that's named something that's more than just lowlands, midlands, highlands, east crater, that sort of thing. because it's easier to remember when we've got the science from it. Look at that surface. So good. It's so interesting. It's very mun-like, but because it's lacking all of the surface scatter, it is also very unique. So I get Poduki out on EVA and to do an EVA report, and I was gonna have him do the EVA science, but unfortunately he can't do it if he's hanging on to the ladder, and I just didn't feel like risking letting go of the ladder now that we are in a impact trajectory. If he separates from the lander, it's goodbye for him. He's just gonna impact, and if we tried to stop him from impacting, then that means we lose the lander. So neither way is good, so he just took an EVA report and hopped right back in. So yeah, we are going to be landing in the lowlands, which is going to be a new biome, so that's good. We've got 30 seconds until our suicide burn countdown is done, but we have 792 meters per second in this lower stage, but I think we're going to just jettison it now. We have to get rid of it at a high enough altitude that it can explode, because in one of my tests I jettisoned it too late and it ended up rocketing back at the craft, destroying it. So we need to make sure that doesn't happen. We're cutting it very close with our suicide burn. As we come down, the lower stage explodes and goes rocketing off elsewhere, but thankfully none of the pieces came back and hit us, so we should have no problem landing. We're throttling our engine up and down slowly to make sure we descend safely, and once again, all 4 legs on the surface. Valentina is the greatest of all time, in my opinion. Oh, more explosions, but we did not get to see it, unfortunately. But look at that. Look at that huge spike glinting with the sunlight. Glorious. Let's go ahead and do our ground science. The little seismic hammer pounds, little lasers collect their data, and we get some temperature scan, pressure scan, all the good stuff. We unfortunately cannot transmit anything anymore. I thought it was because we lost the amount of communication dishes from the lower side, but it turns out we just didn't extend the communication dish on this stage, so that's unfortunate. Once again, we're using the screen to get Poduki out on EVA, and this time not only is he gonna do the EVA science, yeah, see, I had trouble with the ladder right there, no good. But yeah, not only is he going to do the EVA science, but he's going to take a quick look around and see if he can't find one of the breaking ground scatter. A Duna stone, to be more precise. And he's going to go ahead and try to find that. At first I thought it was one of these spikes. I took a quick peek at the breaking ground screen and I thought it was this spike, but I was mistaken. But nonetheless, pretty cool. Pretty cool feature for the surface. Here's the Duna stone we need. It didn't take us too long. It was actually right around the corner from that spike. That's what I was looking at. But I just gotta say, once again, I'm so glad that we've been able to make the progress towards the exploration. I did the Escaping Kerman series a little while ago, back before I got my new computer. And in that, our sole mission was to make it interplanetary to somewhere else, and we made it to Duna, and that made me very proud. But now with our visit to Ike, and once we gather all of our Kerbals off the surface of Duna and bring them on home, I think we're gonna pursue Eve next, or maybe Jewel. Maybe we'll go check out Val, like that person said. But nonetheless, we are going to continue on and go to even further places, different places, see all the different little stuff that Parallax has added, see the stuff that Black Rask's volumetric clouds have added, and just in general, explore the furthest reaches of the cosmos. So let's go ahead and get him back in the cockpit. We didn't do the EVA silence like I had planned to. Just another golf ball swung. But that golf ball swung probably would have been like another 200 points of science. So it is unfortunate that we don't do it, but not the end of the world. We are getting a considerable amount of science here. So, you know, as they say about beggars and choosers. But anyways, we are now set to go. I don't want to risk landing in another... I don't want to land in another biome and risk not having enough Delta V to come home, because honestly, the coming home is not a gimme. We are not guaranteed our flight. We are not guaranteed anything. So let us just safely get ourselves back into orbit of Ike, and then figure out our return maneuver from there. Went ahead and did a little extra science here above the surface just to see if it would be any different, and it wasn't. So I just collected all the science, and we will continue our journey. I want to make sure our apoapsis goes a little higher so we don't end up smashing into any of these mountains. But we're gonna actually go into a circularization of Ike, because we're going to need to have the best chance of coming home possible. So that means we are going to have to wait for the best transfer window. So I'm not sure what the safest height above Ike is, but 20 kilometers seems to be a fair enough estimation. So we're going to circularize there. Point ourselves towards our maneuver. We're going to time warp our way. And then, unfortunately, I didn't notice until it was too late, but the blue of the sunset would have been really cool to see. I was very unhappy that I missed that. I'd never seen it in any of the test flights, so I wasn't prepared for it. So maybe we'll have to come back at some point and revisit. And just like that, the camera flips around, tells us we are once again in orbit. I time warp away to the other side of the planet to see if the sunrise gives me anything, but unfortunately it does not. And I probably could have waited again and seen it on another pass, but I got impatient. I wanted to get ourselves pointed home, so kind of forgot about it. But next time. So here we are. We can plot a maneuver into Kerbin. It's going to take 1 year, 92 days, which is not great. You know, we've already spent 344 days on this mission. However, you know what? It's as good as we can do. And it's around this time that I'm starting to realize that time is the one resource that's in this game that we actually do have. In KXP POV, we have life support. We have the life support mod, so our Kerbals can spend only a limited amount of time in space because they are limited to their actual life support. In RP1, our time is very precious because we have the launch complexes. Any time spent doing something is time well spent. And if you're not doing anything, if you're just fast forwarding to the next thing, you're essentially wasting a valuable resource, which is time. But in KXP, we have the challenge of remote tech, so we already have that going against us, and the fact that we are challenging ourselves to go interplanetary, which is not an easy task, I would say, but we already are challenging ourselves that there's no need to challenge ourselves by making the most efficient time. My initial plan for this whole mission was to get this craft up and into space and on its way to Duna, and then send another craft and get it up on its way to Duna, and then go to Duna and then take over some of the rovers on Duna, have them drive around, do all that stuff during the time that these crafts, the lander and the following rover, while they're taking the long trek, we could have been utilizing that time to our most efficiency. But you know what? I realized I just want to get the science, I don't have the ability of sending the kind of lander and rescue mission and ascent vehicle and mothership that I want to make. I just don't have the science for it. So why should I spend time waiting for that science, wasting time on crafts that are almost good enough, but maybe not? So let's just focus all our efforts on this Ike mission. It'll take as long as it needs to take. If they get stuck out in space, we will rescue them. If they have to take 10 years just to make the right transfer window, we'll do it, because these Kerbals are now the most important thing in our space program, and getting them home is priority one. We skip ahead. As you see, we are now at year 2, day 299, getting close to our first maneuver to bring us back home. 21-second burn, only 100 and some odd delta V out of our 1500 reservoir. Looking good. It feels like we've got plenty of delta V, but we need to not get cocky, especially since Astrogator decided to put us in this very strange elliptical orbit. How is this the most efficient Kerbal transfer that you can give me, Astrogator? I swear, Astrogator, if you ruin this mission because I decided to be lazy and use you, I will never install you again. Uninstalled forever on all series if you ruin this for me. Because now we only have 1500 meters per second of delta V, and now we have to rendezvous from this freaking orbit. So we get whatever we could, whatever first thing that we could get that was enough delta V that wouldn't completely kill us. And as you see, 964 out of our 1500, that's not great. It doesn't leave us a lot to circularize with. It's very difficult. And one of the biggest problems is in order to get this interception, we're going to have to wait 6 years. Ugh. But you know what? It's worth it. The science will be worth it. The Kerbal experience will be worth it. Just saying that we could do it will be worth it. And not having to have this be a 2-parter episode, Not having to be like, all right, guys, well, we weren't able to get them home, but, eventually we'll get them. And maybe in the next episode we'll try and, we'll get them home or start it. Like, yeah, I could do that. But, it's very easy to do a 2-part episode, and sometimes the mission calls for it. But right now, today's mission, I just wanted to throw this at Ike. I wanted to get it back home, and I wanted to do it all at once. So we will take whatever maneuver gets us there. Got a 2.5 minute burn now. It's going to use up most of our delta V, but it should get us an intercept. So we focused on Kerman at the end of our burn, only a second left, and our periapsis just peeks in ever so slightly. So now, my first thought is, well, can we circularize? Like, what would be? But even just to slow down ever so slightly, change our trajectory is way too much delta V. We can't point prograde and stop ourselves at all. So what's the next step? The next step is to lower our periapsis so we can take advantage of the atmospheric drag, but that too cannot be done, at least not from the sphere of influence. We're gonna have to do one of these mid-course corrections and take care of it that way. I'm starting to get a little nervous here. There's a very real chance that we can mess this up and not have anything available to us. That even if we can get into the atmosphere and use air drag forces, if we don't get enough drag and it just sends us out back into the orbit of the sun again, that's it. You know, this mission is dead in the water, and we're gonna have to gather them from space, from an orbit of the sun, and that is not great. But that tiny little maneuver, 13 meters per second is all it takes. We've got 536, so that's pretty good. We're not going to be able to make this perfect. We're not going to be able to circularize, but with a periapsis at 68 meters, we're at least in the atmosphere, and we'll adjust it later as we go. But for now, we'll take this 13 meters per second. Time warp our way. We're now at year 9, day 168, day 177, and yeah, it's been a long mission. Not just for me, but for the Kerbals as well. Sure, they'd love to stretch their feet, but at least they're not in a Mach 3 command pod or a Mach 1 command pod, or even worse, a Mach 1 lander can. I mean, whew, 9-year mission in one of those? Do not sign me up. So a 1-second burn handled by remote tech is doable, and it's easy to be accurate when the computers are the ones doing it. So there we go. All 13 meters per second burnt without needing to use the throttle limiter. It did not bring us down to the 68 kilometers, however, so not the most accurate. And once again, my want to circularize is just too pie in the sky. So let's go ahead and do a radial outward or radial inward burn to kind of bring our periapsis down within the atmosphere. 45 kilometers. That will do nicely. In my experience, a 45 to 40 kilometer periapsis from almost any angle or from almost any altitude is enough to bring you down. The question is can you handle the heat? And might I remind you, the Alcor pod does not like heat. So this will be interesting. After all of that, after every single opportunity to fail that we didn't fail, we actually managed to pull it off. To fail now in the last step in the atmosphere of Kerman, to fail in front of the watchful eyes of the world would just be too much. But at least we'll be on the dark side, so you know it'll be harder to photograph us if we do. Three minutes to go till our burn. Only 300 meters per second of a burn. When we zoom out, I'll look at how much we have, but It's quite a bit. Not gonna lie, that is, it's unfortunate that Remote Tech didn't bring us down to the 68 meters per second that we were hoping for, because we're using a lot of our Delta V just to bring ourselves down into the atmosphere. And like I mentioned, just being in the atmosphere isn't a guarantee. Honestly, I should be putting up our terror music. Mach 3 by Mints, our music that we put on at anytime success is not guaranteed, but we are going to play something hopeful because at this point I am nothing if not hopeful. I go to try to adjust my retrograde as much as possible to see if we can't slow ourselves down in the last minute, use up the last 220 meters per second of Delta V we have to better capture ourselves. Unfortunately, I'm not really able to plan a maneuver very well, so I've decided, you know what, we'll just play it by ear. Let's close our bay doors, let's retract our solar panel, point ourselves retrograde, and we'll fire off our fuel in the atmosphere and then jettison our tank. Nonetheless, we are coming home. If we get launched down into space, then we'll have to just deal with it then. But if not, the stories we will tell, the science we will provide, the glory that will be had, Valentina, Bill, and Poduki Kerman will be yours. So we burn, but we're already on fire, and the heating gauges are starting to appear everywhere, so I decided to jettison that as fast as I can and inflate the heat shield to protect the Alcor pod from everything. Beautiful view as we come on in, and in our test flights, the heat shield was enough to protect us, but those test flights were all done at a much more reasonable angle of attack, and we were already in orbit of Kerbin at that point. So when I saw on the map view, when I saw our apoapsis come back down and we are now in the sphere of influence of Kerbin, which means that even if we don't get taken down on this first pass, we're not going to be flung out into space. We're going to just come right back down for a second pass, and then a third if we have to. These Kerbals are coming home. But looking at our apoapsis, it is now below the Kármán line. Periapsis is now in the negative. We are coming home on our first pass. This gigantic heat shield was the perfect choice. Overpowered? Yes, you know, much bigger than we needed, probably more expensive, a lot of wasted material, sure. But with the Alcor pod that wants to explode at a sneeze, it was well worth it. And pretty soon we're going to be coming in pretty hot as well. If we want to land on Eve, we're going to need to utilize these heat shields. If we want to come back from any of these planets again at such an extreme angle, we're going to need plenty of experience with these heat shields. So it's good to start them now. So my parachutes deploy, and then I jettison the heat shield, but I do that a little too soon. I probably could have hold on to it for a little while longer, because now it's just going to kind of get in our way for the rest of the trip down. We are landing on the dark side. Unfortunately, we can't see anything, and I did not put any lights on this top stage. I did on the lander part, but we have already jettisoned that. So, unfortunately, we're in the dark, and I apologize. So I'm going to try to highlight the heat shield to kind of give us an idea of what's going on, and I'm glad that I did, because I don't know what's going on. It's just the aerodynamic forces pushing back against the heat shield, and the fact that it's no longer connected to the Alcor pod, just kind of flopping it around. But once the parachutes open, unless we get ourselves caught on the heat shield in any aspect, it will drop away from us and shouldn't cause us any further trouble. If we were in IVA mode, we'd be getting voiced red altitude warnings, but we don't get it in third person mode, unfortunately. But we are now passing 2 kilometers and getting very close to the final, the maximum, or I guess minimum altitude for the parachutes to deploy. Somewhere around 1 kilometer. No, maybe less. I forgot. Either way, it will be opening soon, and with that sound and with that motion, our heat shield gets pulled away from us as it is now going faster than we are. And once that thing hits 450 meters away from us, it goes and splashes down in the water below. It was fun that we were able to see that, even the water effects of it. It was close enough to see, so that was cool. And let us know that we are very close to landing, and we're only coming down at 4.5 meters per second, so I have no fear at all that we are going to be able to land intact, safe, and sound. And even the science experiments at the bottom in our service bay, I feel like all of those will be intact, and they are. I'm so happy about this. I hope you are as well. I hope you enjoyed that mission, because that was a very fun one. I had a lot of fun making it and editing it and bringing it to you guys, and I'm excited to do the next one with whatever science we can unlock, whatever things we can unlock with our 4,347 science. I can't believe it. We're going to be able to do so much with that, and look at that. All of our pilots now almost level 4. Poduki's level 3 still, but Valentina and Bill sitting where they should as MVPs of our program. So in addition to that 4,000 science, we also have $5 million. I'm not exactly sure where all that came from, but because we didn't actually complete any of these missions here, so not entirely sure. But I think the game really liked all those milestones we had done, and the fact that we had collected all that science, and I think maybe one of our strategies and the strategy admin building had something to do with that. But nonetheless, we've got plenty of money and plenty of science for the next episode, and I'm very excited. I hope you are as well. But as a new day dawns, this episode will come to a close. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward for more KXP. If you did, please think about subscribing. Drop me a like, let me know your thoughts, and I will see y'all in the next one. Take care.